I am this spiritual teacher.
She's incorporating practices that can be harmful.
I feel like she's Jesus. If you want to come within 50 miles of me, you better be ready for the deepest end of the pool.
Right off the bat, a few things to say. The topic of Teal Swan has to do with people that are dealing with mental health struggles, and Teal Swan is especially known for having followers and being responsible and talking about the subject matter of someone who is grappling with thoughts of ending their own existence. As we all know, YouTube doesn't like us using certain words. As a reminder, this is not really YouTube, this is the advertisers that don't want attached to it. So this section will have censorship, but you all know what we're saying and you all understand the topic matter at hand. In my opinion, I feel that it's better to dance around and work with YouTube's wants and rules so that we can get the message out about things like these cults versus getting upset about it or whatever and freaking out in the comments. All right. So you don't need to freak out in the comments. Everyone needs to calm down. This is like such a non-issue, this whole thing about language being changed by censorship. Human language has evolved over hundreds and thousands of years. You go back a couple hundred years, we wouldn't even be able to understand English. People need to stop getting upset about that. Instead, get upset about these cult leaders still existing on these platforms. All right, let's get into this. She is a combination. She started in the conspirituality field, where conspirituality, you're not really following necessarily one person, but you're following an idea, right? A theory or whatever it might be. And she built upon that to then build out her brand and herself. So she has become a cult of personality, but she did originally start in the conspirituality field. We're going to be talking about conspirituality in the next set of videos, the next parts of this that are going to be coming out, not this week, but the next week. And we're going to be getting into conspirituality stuff, and it's related into conspiracy theory, spirituality. And this is where it's important to kind of understand that a lot of these people can fit into different types of cults. Like the different classification can fit multiple types of cults and cult leaders. I'm going to include this short video from Knitting Cult Lady. I really recommend her. She has very good insight on this stuff. She has a lot of good feedback on everything, and she does talk about conspirituality a bit here too. I did want to include part of her video with the Teal Swan thing just to introduce you guys to her.
Y'all have asked me about Teal Swan. Here's a bit about her from Conspirituality. How New Age conspiracies became a health threat. And she was a survivor of the Satanic Panic, which was spiritualists telling children and implanting memories in children that they had been ritually used in these ritualistic things. And it was a big thing in the 80s and 90s. None of it turned out to be true. Mary Bosworth is now known as Teal Swan, is her claim that she suffered 13 years of abuse in a schmurderous Mormon satanic cult where she was routinely tortured, made to torture other children, and once spent 12 hours sewn into a corpse. And again, she's not a survivor of this. She's a survivor of a psychologist who was a conspiritualist planting this in her head. Conspiritualist. On the basis of these stories, but without training, qualifications, or oversight, Swan developed a signature method for healing deep trauma that she calls the completion process. 50 practitioners trained in the method are listed on her website. She also invites followers to a $5,000 week-long retreat at her casa in Costa Rica. Some retreatants end up never leaving, choosing instead to live there and work for Swan as unpaid volunteers. It's a cult.
Teal Swan is a spiritual and self-help influencer whose work sparked ongoing discussion about personality-driven influence in the wellness space. She built a very large following around trauma healing and emotional truth, while also facing sustained media scrutiny over her methods, messaging, and follower dynamics.
Teal Swan claims that she is an expert in human suffering and focuses on healing trauma through spiritual practices. Her most popular videos have titles like How to Activate and Open Your Third Eye, How to Heal the Emotional Body, How to Use Your Intuition, and How to Get Rid of Anxiety. Once you click, you're greeted with Teal Swan speaking to you softly in front of a green screen, telling you to embrace your emotions.
The alternative is to completely embrace your emotions and your feelings, no matter how painful or uncomfortable they may be.
And for many people, this works. The comments are flooded with testimonies of people who've been deeply affected by the video. One person writes, "Teal literally has the presence of a mother. She's so caring and nurturing in a way. It felt like Teal was an angel." Another replies, "She's one of my mother figures. I think maybe the second most important to my heart."
Teal Swan is the product of the Satanic Panic. The Satanic Panic got so out of control as there were therapists essentially planting memories into children's heads. And where Teal Swan was from, it was Utah. And across Arizona and Utah, there was a very popular therapist, is Barbara Snow.
Barbara Snow, who used a technique called memory regression to coax children into admitting that they had been victims of satanic rituals and had witnessed atrocities. The victims did not know that they were victims until they'd had this so-called memory regression, and it seemed more likely that Barbara and her associates had been implanting and creating these memories during the sessions.
Her practice of memory regression therapy has been largely discredited. In my opinion, I think that they should be pulling licenses of therapists still doing this stuff. It's been widely known that this stuff actually implants memories, but I don't know. I guess Utah's going to do what Utah's going to do. At the very least, it looks like the police officers there have discredited Barbara, at least in the precinct or whatever. They don't take her reports seriously, which is good because it's just a waste of police resources for a bunch of BS.
In 2006, Barbara Snow filed a complaint with the North Park Police Department in North Logan, Utah, on behalf of her patient, Teal Swan. This is the psychologist from earlier. After the deputy county attorney looked into Snow's history of false accusations, Swan's files were closed. The psychologist's history of false accusations.
And Teal would later say that she remembered everything from her childhood, but yet those memories didn't come until after she started seeing Barbara Snow.
From the age of 6 up until she was 19 years old, she says that she was a victim of this satanic ritual, and Barbara Snow herself was Teal's therapist during the early 2000s when Teal was in her early 20s and had just escaped this alleged cult.
So I would wake up 3:22 a.m., walk out to the end of the driveway, and he'd pick me up and we'd go do these cult rituals.
Teal Swan claims that she was abused and tortured by a man who was part of a satanic cult. She claims to have seen children sacrificed before her eyes. She claims to have been sex trafficked, drugged, and taken away in her sleep to satanic rituals, and has done many lengthy public interviews about her story.
I think that maybe she experienced some kind of trauma when she was younger that led her down this path. I do think that she is a victim of Barbara, in my opinion, allegedly, and I don't think she's actually worked through any trauma, any real trauma she has had, because it's been veiled in this fantasy of the satanic panic stuff that Barbara has been pushing for some time now. And Teal likes to use this excuse that she cannot be running a cult because she is the product of a cult herself. There's a few clips I'm going to show you from this video from Uncle Herman, and they actually go into some detail about some of her background and find some holes in her story, so I'm going to include those as well here.
They went to work doing all kinds of horrific stuff to try to get me to come back to Christ. So my childhood, from age what I consider 6, even though technically it started beforehand, that was when I really consider the end of my childhood, when I got brought into them and I really didn't belong to my parents anymore. All the way to 19, I was with these groups and specifically with this man.
However, a once close friend of Teal was interviewed for the Gateway podcast, which is a 6-episode investigation into Teal Swan by Jennings Brown, which I highly recommend and will link below. And in this interview, Tori explains that Teal tried to convince her that they had known each other before and had both been victims of the same cult. Tori was referred to Barbara Snow by Teal, who said that Barbara would help her remember. Tori then claims that Barbara tried to tell her things about her childhood that were not true.
We got in a fight because she was telling me these things that were insane. She began to start telling me that I had actually grown up with her and that I was a part of this cult that she had been experiencing. That we met when we were at this ritual in the woods, in the mountains. It was like a child sacrifice. And she would kind of say things like, "Do you remember the trees? Do you remember the fire, the people?" And I'm like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. That's insane. She just said that there was a lot of work that I needed to do because I was repressing all of these memories of being abused to the degree that she says that she had been abused. So we just got in this argument that ended with me just being in tears, because I'm like, I care about you as a friend, but I can't grasp this. I don't understand what you're doing here, why you're telling me this, and why you're trying to convince me so much that this thing happened. So finally she just wrote down on a piece of paper, Barbara Snow.
Another childhood friend of Teal's came forward on a podcast and claimed that Teal had also convinced her that she had repressed memories that she needed to uncover.
Well, and even though you didn't recover a memory, I imagine you were still brainstorming a lot of potential scenarios that could have, the thoughts are always there in your mind. You're still exposing your brain constantly to images of you being abused almost, even though you know that you're just brainstorming.
You look through every aspect of your life and question it, and then you don't know your life anymore. There's what's real, what's not real. You lose your life trying to find things that weren't there in your life, that you kind of die a little inside.
And this woman and how she's speaking about the situation, this is what's happened to victims of the satanic panic, victims of these therapists. They end up questioning their life. It's is this real? Is this not real? And they get confused. And this is why this practice is largely discredited, and it just does damage.
And if it was Barbara Snow who supposedly uncovered these memories of Teal's, I would have more reason to believe that Teal was a victim of Barbara's false memories.
So how did she sort of set this up? So her platform grew within the spiritual and wellness world, spaces that often draw people looking for healing, validation, and meaning. The messaging emphasizes being deeply understood and finding transformation outside traditional systems. And some of the techniques that we see in this particular case, her influence reflects common personality-centered dynamics, looking at things like strong personal branding tied to emotional authority. It was emotional stories. There's also confessional content that builds intimacy and trust, letting you into her inner life. Framing herself as uniquely honest or willing to say what others won't. Teal's therapy technique is called the completion process, and it's pretty much memory regression therapy and implanted memory therapy with a different name.
The completion process is Teal Swan's signature method of healing. She has written books about it and claims that this is the best way to heal trauma. Teal believes that all mental ailments and some physical ailments are a result of childhood trauma that you may not even remember until you do her completion process. Sounds a little similar to our friend Barbara Snow, and it is, in my opinion. The process involves asking what your bad feelings are currently or when you were last triggered. You're then asked when in your memory you first felt these feelings. This is almost always when the person was a child. Teal will then ask you to embellish as much as you can in this scene in which you were a child, and more often than not there will be a parent present who is mistreating you in some way and causing you to feel this feeling. You then relive this trauma, sit with the emotion, and you're supposedly on the path to releasing that emotion. As Teal claims to know you better than yourself, she's able to get your repressed memories out. She holds seminars and retreats where people can go through this with her or with one of her inner circle. You see, you can become a certified completion process practitioner by taking one of her courses, and the people that take this course then become almost Teal's disciples. Many of them live with Teal and join her on her retreats, whilst others return home to practice the completion process remotely. It is these disciples who I believe are the ones in Teal's cult.
So she's essentially creating new victims of the satanic panic. This is Jared, an ex-follower, and I believe they also dated for some time as well. He has a lot to say about Teal.
What she said is okay, I'm going to teach you how to uncover your repressed memories. Lie down and let your brain show you whatever your brain
comes up with.
Yeah, and so you make up these fanciful, horrific tales of all sorts of disgusting, disturbing things, and you do it for hours and hours, and you build upon this narrative that gets bigger and longer.
Why did she feel like you needed to do this?
Because I had to learn who I really was.
And there's community language as well that reinforces belonging in the group, and criticism reframed as misunderstanding or projection. She did a lot of that backtracking when there was that documentary released about her. Additionally, when you go to look for documentaries of Teal Swan, there are two. There is one which is called The Deep End.
So, with all of these allegations and concerns bubbling beneath the surface, a documentary crew began following Teal and created a 4-part documentary for Hulu, which many viewers now take as evidence that Teal is in fact running a cult, despite Teal's constant efforts to debunk it. The true cult allegations actually don't lie within her millions of online followers, but within her inner circle, the people who left behind their families, their identities, and in some cases their own autonomy to follow her and live in her commune. She tells them that they are not allowed to have partners, to have children, or to have any relationships outside of the inner circle. In exchange for their loyalty, they are offered room and board and the promise of spiritual healing through their proximity to Teal. Technically, you can leave when you want, but at great cost.
And this crew lived and stayed or something with Teal for 3 years, or was in her life for 3 years. The documentary crew. So this is based off 3 years of work, and as well they bring in people that are licensed therapists and cult experts and things like that to get their opinions on things that they're seeing. It's a very well done documentary, and since this came out, it's pretty much proved that she's a cult leader for the most part. But as well, there's another documentary that I believe she funded, which is called Open Shadow. So just be aware, there's 2 of them.
Also wish that people knew more about the criteria for a cult. What I do is empower the individual. That is the exact opposite of what a cult can do. In fact, a cult can't exist unless one person is empowered and the rest of them are unempowered. Besides, it's, teaching people to trust themselves. That's your recipe for loss of control. So unless I'm the worst cult leader that ever existed.
And this is why this video is important. Just because you don't fit the definition of a coercive, high control cult, it doesn't mean that you're not a cult. You're just a different kind of cult. You might not be high control, even though she is. But she's trying to say that because she's not like Jim Jones, therefore she's not a cult. Like, this is her thought process, right? And this is what she tries to play on, is the words and the terms and stuff to prove that she isn't a cult because she doesn't fit this perfect box of what she believes a cult is. Which I'm sure her belief of cult came from the Satanic Panic. And in my opinion, she seems very calculated and very cold and like she knows what she's doing. I don't think that she's as innocent as she comes across or tries to come across.
She jokes in one interview that she has found a group of codependent people.
There seemed to be a type of innocence and kindness, both.
Super codependent people.
So how did...
But this is not a joke. She has actively created a group of people who are completely codependent. They are dependent on her, and she is dependent on them for creating and upholding her Teal Swan empire. These are often vulnerable people who have nowhere else to go, and whose entire purpose becomes Teal Swan.
That clip is also another example. One of the things that I am trying to get across here too is that we have people that are personality cults or, different influencers online. Yes, they may not control their following necessarily in some cases, but they have like a closer group, and that's who they're really actually coercively controlling. And then their following they're using to make them money, get them fame, like send their message out and so forth. And that will bring them in more followers that they can coercively control, which she does do coercive control.
Teal was married at the time, but told Jared that she and him were meant to be together. Eventually, Teal cheated on her husband with Jared and began a relationship with him, and her husband slowly got kicked out of the picture. Like many in Teal's inner circle, Jared was given a new name, and to her, he was known as Fallon. We can see that many of Teal's followers will adopt new names once they become associated with her, as Cyan proudly tells the camera in the 2022 documentary.
My actual legal name is Matthew.
Are you familiar with Teal's work?
No. Both Teal and I at the same time were like, something feels so different to where like my name doesn't even feel like it matches me anymore. Like that's some other identity. And then we came up with this name together.
She was all about monitoring, controlling what I said and who I said it to. And like if I was on the phone with someone, I was on speaker and everyone was listening in and she'd just be like, see, like he is evil or whatever, just like all sorts of stuff. And she wanted me to cut out my family, but in like a backhanded way of like, they're not good for you.
Another devout follower, Andy, made a video on his experience of Teal's inner circle and claims that it functions like a cult.
It's a weird one because it doesn't look or act like a regular cult in a lot of senses. Like, it is a cult and it does fit the criteria, but it does in a kind of roundabout way. So it's easy for example, Teal to say, I have the perfect recipe for a cult, but it's not a cult because of my ethics, which, I mean, that's a whole other can of worms.
As well, in the documentary, they show that there's like a contract that people have to sign, the people that come to live with Teal on her commune. And it reads like a cult. It's like a cult contract. So I'll put a little bit of that here as well for you to check out.
Which is called the non-negotiables. And this is a list of the things that people have to agree to if they're going to be part of this inner circle. And it does not read well. It's, you can't put your own family first. The Teal has to come first. If she wants you there, she gets you. The priority of the entire community is whatever's in the best interests of Teal. Everything else is second to that. You can't have personal boundaries that have in any way an effect on Teal.
What happens in the documentary is one of Teal's like best friends, have been around since the beginning, ends up meeting a woman, getting engaged, and tries to bring her into the commune. And all through that documentary, Teal just seems to be like not liking her, really jealous of her, upset that she's there, and she just kind of turns on them all. But in doing so, like it's done in a very coercive fashion. So I'll show you a little bit about it as well. And also the girl, even at the end, she says that she's scared of Teal. Like, it's very creepy, to say the least.
I feel like what we need to do as team members is choose what consequences we say yes to upon bringing a partner into this circle.
Yeah. Basically, what this boils down to is I need to be able to get rid of you if you bring somebody close that's dangerous to me.
Yeah.
I can't be kept awake at 3 o'clock in the fucking morning before an interview by a screaming baby.
All the girls here are on board. We're not having kids.
We need to write this down. I want this to be part of the contract.
The fact that Blake, her closest friend of nearly 20 years, was kicked out because he began a relationship with an outsider.
If you want to flip the favor around, like you guys have been doing to me, the level of judgment you have on me being a narcissistic bitch, you're a absolute loser. Always will be. Do you think I control others, even the way they see things? Do you think I'm too masculine, too harsh, not very nice, don't care about people, manipulate Blake? I'm tyrannical, have the wrong values, use people. I hurt myself and others. I'm power hungry and responsible for the power struggles between you and me. I want everyone for myself. I surround myself with enablers. That I'm very powerful, that I'm very talented, that I have a very meaningful mission. How conflicting. Yeah, this is what you've been doing since the minute you landed. You keep insulting me. It's all over your energy field. So I suggest you talk about that.
What do you feel when you hear that, Juliana?
Because if you're not aware, you have this smirk on your face.
A smirk? No, I'm afraid, actually.
So yeah, that was his fiance, and I do find it interesting because Teal had a smirk on her face when she did that to her, not the other way around.
Did you ever think, what if she's lying, or could this be false, or?
No, because I'm in so much pain, and I'm holding I'm feeling so bad, and she has the answers that I'm holding myself hostage to all this. I'm forcing myself. This is the way.
Because you're desperate.
I'm desperate.
Now I want to explore the catalyst with this group of how things have kind of been taking a downfall. You could debate me on this, but it feels like as media coverage and documentaries sort of criticized her, they got a culty feeling from her, this actually reinforced the loyalty among her supporters, and it intensified the cult environment. And then she started doing this whole they're out to get me. And I feel like that kind of triggered it to be the real culty aspect to it. But it's something to explore. All right, now let's take a look at the consequences and the victims of Teal Swan. And this is where things actually head down a darker path, as it's not just the people in her inner circle, in her commune. Yes, that's a coercive cult, but she has also been affecting her followers too, and there has been, unfortunately, some deaths because of her.
Beneath the soft-spoken wisdom and New Age mysticism lies something far more unsettling. Her teachings have been accused of encouraging dependency, isolation, and causing multiple suicides. Many mental health professionals have called Teal's methods reckless and harmful. Teal rejects traditional psychology and therefore has no qualifications or license in this field. She claims that she does not need one, as she has divine knowledge and experience and is not healing people in ways that can be researched via traditional academic routes. However, in 2017, she did receive a cease and desist from the state of Utah for attempting to practice mental health therapy without a license. The fine was never paid, and around this time, Teal Swan relocated to Costa Rica to start running her retreats there.
Moving to another country to avoid getting in trouble by the law and being held accountable, well, that's a pretty good sign that this might be a cult or, at the very least, criminal activity.
In 2012, Teal's first one-on-one client took her own life. For the sake of this video, I'll call this client Joanne. Joanne had been struggling with depression for many years. After seeking help through traditional routes and taking antidepressants, she sought out Teal Swan for alternative therapy. Through Teal's one-on-one sessions, she uncovered suppressed memories of extreme childhood trauma involving her father. Joanne's husband was also a follower of Teal and claims that Teal told him that he had been married to her in a past life. We don't know why Joanne took her own life and what role Teal may or may not have played in it, but it did spark a larger conversation about the dangers of the way that Teal speaks about death.
What sparked the controversy around Teal and how she recommends looking at death is this video. I'm just going to show a little bit of it because I don't think YouTube likes this video being around. It's from the BBC, did a documentary. It's 2 separate videos of hers, just so you get an idea of the things that she was encouraging of her followers.
What suicide is pushing the reset button. It's not a good or bad decision in and of itself.
After their documentary, they actually spoke to YouTube and got them to pull the video, but there is still copies of it floating around on YouTube, which brings me full circle back into these people should not be platformed on YouTube because they are essentially cult leaders, allegedly in my opinion, and they're doing damage to people. And the one client that I mentioned here isn't the only one. There's at least 4 that we know of, and that number was said during this BBC documentary, which was I think a couple of years ago. The only reason that some of these are known is because they had family and friends who looked at their computers after and realized that they were consuming Teal's content. And so we don't know. The number could be higher than the 4 that people know about. Additionally, these people's names are not publicized anywhere. And normally I do try to recognize and tell the story of the victims, but I think a lot of people, because I have been through this too, someone who's like a sister to me did this, and a lot of people don't like to publicize their names. A lot of people feel that it ruins their memory of them. So I'm not going to show their names or anything like that, but there is a statement, an interview that the BBC did with the mother of one of the victims. So I'll show you that, but the other ones I'm not going to go digging for who they are. It seems that they want to be left anonymous, and that makes, in this particular type of death, it's very common.
Teal believes in reincarnation. She tells viewers to imagine their deaths.
So let yourself physically give up on life by falling on the floor.
According to Teal, this will make people see that there's nowhere to go from death but back to life. So why leave? In a Google video search on terms related to suicide, that film came up as one of the top results with more than 230,000 views.
And has optimized her videos so that anyone who's struggling may type their desperate pleas for help into the YouTube search bar and be greeted by one of her videos. She admits to using specific tags to target desperate and vulnerable people in an interview with Jennings Brown on episode 3 of the Gateway podcast.
She wants to get her message to people when they're desperate, in dire need. She has good SEO. It's all intentional.
I specifically try to go for tags and things like that that capture that audience. Mm-hmm. When you're in a desperate state, it's not sophisticated. Mm-hmm. People, when they're in that state, they type in shit like, I just lost my mother, what the fuck do I do?
Right.
Literally, that will be the Google tagline. So even when we're doing videos, we'll add things like that so that someone's title or somebody's just had a breakup or whatever, that's the video that comes up.
Teal was explicit. She uses tags that target people.
So the BBC did an investigative piece on Teal, and just to give a little TLDR of it, they immersed themselves in Teal, but they found she had a closed Facebook group with over 20,000 people. In that group, there was a lot of people who were dealing with thoughts of taking their own lives. And as part of that, whenever someone would post that, people would then link Teal's video, which is very problematic in and of itself. So I'm going to play you some excerpts of the interview BBC did with a mother of someone who is in that group, someone who is not alive today. And then they interviewed Teal, and it's pretty clear that Teal sees this as a statistical game to her, that, you know, she's not culpable because statistics say that there's bound to be somebody who would do that to themselves, especially in the field that she's in.
You would have to convince me otherwise that Teal's teachings did not play a significant role.
Her mum says she was a talented artist,
She had a gift for lighting.
drawing on paper and online.
Eyes were always like extraordinary. I know everybody thinks that maybe their child is an artist, but she really was.
She shared this drawing she'd done of Teal in the Facebook group.
I have to remove parts of this BBC video because YouTube won't like the terminology. Her daughter had a breakup. She was not dealing with it well. She ended up in that group talking about her thoughts. Those thoughts. The people in the group shared Teal's videos on this matter, and then her daughter, 2 weeks later, she was gone.
There's the day that your child took their life, and Mother's Day, and there's Father's Day, and some of the most joyous days of your life become some of the most challenged days.
After her death, she trawled her daughter's social media and saw her posts on Teal's Facebook group.
What did you think of the responses to your daughter's post?
I can't even believe that when you're in a group of people to pass along a video of that nature, that's the tool that you think will help someone when they're in that phase of their life. Well, I believe that there were more than one undercurrent happening in the life of our daughter. You would have to convince me otherwise that Teal's teachings did not play a significant role in the mind of our daughter when she took her life.
Well, certainly on your Facebook page, there have been at least 2 quite young people that have taken their own lives.
I'm not aware of them.
I am about to go on a rant about this, but I just want to pop in here real quick. Look at how she reacts to that and has no empathy or care at all. And then listen to the rest of how she talks.
I'm not aware of them. If you look at the demographic of people who are interested in my type of material, you're working with an unstable group of people already, a very large following that I have. The fact that I am now responsible for and people who came to me, that's pretty insane, too, to say that towards anyone.
I don't quite know how to put it all in words, what I'm seeing with Teal, but just you chose to make this your career. You chose to be a guru in this field. You are responsible for what happens. You can't just say, I'm not responsible because, you know, all these numbers in the world and I have no control over what people do. When you are literally helping people with this, this is why people are trained in this field and why you refuse to do training and have taken off to another country when they tried to shut you down, because look at what you're offering. It's dangerous. And the fact that Teal still doesn't get that, I don't know. I think she does. In my opinion, I don't think that she actually is dealing with a lot of the stuff that people like this deals with. Like, I have firsthand experience with it, a bunch of other people in my life, and, you know, I've seen a lot of it. Teal just seems like someone who's taking advantage of people who are in a really tough position. She knows what she's doing, and she wants to make money off them, build her commune cult, whatever it might be. In my opinion, it's all my opinion. Teal really comes off very cold, uncaring, almost sociopath, like psychopath kind of attitude towards the people that she refuses to take responsibility for affecting, where it is her problem. It is her responsibility, as she chose to make this her job. She chose to take on this subject matter. She chose to use it in SEO and tags and all the other crap to attract this type of people. And this is why people like this shouldn't have a platform. Sadly, why I get heated about these cult personalities. It's not just like spiritual gurus. It's also weird health advice, psychics. We're going to get into Andrew Tate in a second too. The manosphere crap. It is some of the scummiest people who are just feeding off of everyone's fears and insecurities, and they create these cults around them. And social media has just made it so much easier for these people to find an audience, take advantage of people, and hurt people. And it's just crazy that this is where we're at now. Even the follow-up video after this one too, that I'm also linking to everything, is the update on Ashley Gillard, that TikTok psychic who accused someone of being a murderer, which they weren't. And there's like a whole civil case and everything happened there. But she had a huge following that were believing everything she said too. And this is the problem. We really need like more critical thinking, or I don't even know how to resolve the issue. Social media is just a breeding ground for horrible people to find people who are struggling and in that moment weak-minded or weak-willed and just take advantage of them. Sorry, that's my little bit of a rant there. To get back on track here, the host of this BBC documentary ends up seeking out a psychologist and asking his opinion about like this Facebook group and the dangers surrounding it. He has some good insight I'll include as well.
If you're and you go onto a forum and everybody is then it normalizes being. And so I think social media platforms have an enormous responsibility.
As I already mentioned, after this documentary came out, or when they were working on it, they reached out to Facebook, YouTube. They had the YouTube video removed. Teal's channel remained though and is still there. But the video was re-uploaded like minutes later. And then the Facebook group was shut down. And then a new one was started again with the same admins. Just Teal herself wasn't no longer an admin on it, but it's the people that run all of her stuff are still admins on this group. So it really didn't resolve anything. And you can go watch, I'll link it as well. The whole BBC interview, I didn't include it all. The whole one with Teal, she's very cold. She's very like, does not care that people have hurt themselves because of content that she has made. Like she really is very cold. In the interview, I mean, she giggled about people who are in that state of mind and was very flippant and dismissive about her fans doing this stuff. I think that her team or her whatever, they recognized how bad she looked on camera. Like, I honestly don't understand how she has a following. Anyway, her interview was very dismissive of the people who have lost their lives, and she ended up releasing a statement about her views on those thoughts and people acting on the thoughts. The statement that she released is very much like written by a PR company. Like, you can tell it was like, we got to clean up this disaster of an interview that you just did. I think that all of her interviews like this always just show her true self.
There's been a lot of confusion and misconception about my stance on. To be crystal clear, I'm against.
Later, in a statement, Teal told us that any suicide is a tragedy and we send our deepest condolences to this young woman's family. She also added that many mental health professionals support my teaching. When it comes to this sort of content, the stakes are high.
Life is something that is precious, not something that has a reset button where if you're not happy with the way that things are today, that you can have a new tomorrow. A decision like that, which we're now living, will affect their loved ones for the rest of their life.
I'm just putting any helplines up on the screen. I will also put them all in the reference document as well that I have linked. If this topic and this discussion was at all triggering to you, you need some help, please do reach out to these services. I'm unsure nowadays if the YouTube AI is going to pick this up and flag this video. So if for some reason this gets cut later, the information is still going to be in the references below. There's much more that obviously we could get into about Teal. This is already going to be super long as it is. We'll just end with a final note from Jared, who was saying that he heard her talking about being fake. But that's the other thing to keep in mind. She also claims she's a reincarnation of all these famous people. She also claims that she has access to the Akashic records, which are supposed to be past, present, and future, which means she would have seen the future of her agreeing to this documentary and it blowing up in her face. But apparently apparently she didn't see that. So we didn't even go down these logical fallacies about this stuff. I really just concentrated on the most dangerous aspects of Teal, people who have died, and she refuses to take responsibility of that, and she continues doing what she's doing.
She's like, everyone's going to know I'm a fraud. Everyone's going to know I'm.
What would lead to her saying that? What would be the situation?
I think being tired and just moments of honesty. It was late at night and just moments of honesty. Like,
she would say what?
I'm afraid everyone's going to know that I'm a fraud, that I'm fake.